Okay, friends, welcome back to our online Bible study in the book of Acts. And today we are in all of chapter 14. I'm going to do something a little bit different today. I want to highlight two kind of small things in here. They do connect back to the main thing that I'm going to give you in just a minute. But two small things in here. And then I want to go back to the beginning of our reading for today's reading, and highlight something that, while not stated explicitly, is one of the overarching themes of the book of Acts, or at least something is a through line, something that we see over and over again that I want to make sure that you see. But first, two other kind of interesting things that I want to note. Okay, when we get to verse 8, Paul and Barnabas show up in Lystra. And when they show up in Lystra, Paul heals a guy. And the people who are around then, for understandable reasons given their thought structure at the time, they think that because Paul and Barnabas have the ability to heal somebody, they must themselves be gods. Okay? So what do? They prepare to worship them. They call Barnabas Zeus, and they call Paul Hermes, and they prepare sacrifices. Now, if you go back just a couple of chapters, you'll remember when Herod, people mistook him for a god, and he just went along with it. What happened? He fell down dead. Paul and Barnabas do not make the same mistake. They recognize that this is not right. You are turning your affection in the wrong direction. We're just people, worship God. So when they had the opportunity to be elevated in the sight of people beyond what was legitimate, they quickly turned that around and said, no. Don't worship us. Worship God. Another thing, they're still in Lystra, verse 19. The Jews came from Antioch and Iconium, and having persuaded the crowds, they stoned Paul and dragged him out of the city, supposing that he was dead. So they stone him to the point that he's lifeless. They think that he's dead. But when the disciples gathered around him, he rose up and entered the city, and on the next day went with Barnabas to Derbe. When they had preached the gospel to that city, we don't know how long that was, but when they had preached the gospel to that city and had made many disciples, they returned to Lystra. You see that? In verse 19, he is stoned in Lystra to the point that he is assumed dead. 2 verses later, we don't know the length, but presumably not too long, 2 verses later, he's back in Lystra. That's the kind of person that Paul was. That's the kind of way in which God was forming him into the kind of person who was willing to go back to the very people who had persecuted him, risk being persecuted again in order to tell them the truth. Those two things are connected to the main point that I want to make. But to get at that, let's look at the beginning of chapter 14. At Iconium, they entered together into the Jewish synagogue and spoke in such a way that a great number of both Jews and Greeks believed. But the unbelieving Jews stirred up the Gentiles and poisoned their minds against the brothers. So they remained for a long time speaking boldly for the Lord, who bore witness to the words of his grace, granting signs and wonders to be done by their hands. But the people of the city were divided. Not everybody bought into this. Some sided with the Jews and some with the apostles. When an attempt was made by both Gentiles and Jews with their rulers to mistreat them and to stone them, they learned of it and fled to Lystra and to Derbe, cities in Lycaonia, and to the surrounding country. And there they continued to preach the gospel. So what do we see here? They're doing what they think is right, preaching the good news of Jesus, and it leads to division. Some people don't like them. Then we see that some people love them to the degree that they're being worshipped. But they have to say, no. Take the attention off of us and put it on God. Then the persecution excels to a point where Paul's nearly murdered. And yet, all along the way, when people are praising them and when people are seeking to kill them, they continue to keep their focus on their mission, which is to preach the good news of Jesus. When people don't agree with them, when people seek to elevate them, and when people seek to kill them. Throughout all of that, while there were certainly emotional highs and lows, they remained steady in their commitment to simply do what Jesus had asked them to do, which is to bear witness to the good news of what he was doing all around the world. And the simple thing that I am reminded of is that so often the right thing is often the hard thing. And I just wonder for you, are there things right now that are hard, but you know that they're right? And do you know that if you're doing the right thing, even though it's hard, that you are in good company? That Paul and Barnabas were doing this before you. That we've got 2,000 years of folks. And of course we have people before Jesus that were doing this also. But do you know that oftentimes the right thing is also the hardest thing? And that if you're seeking to remain faithful in that you're in good company. So what this is doing for me today is this providing me a degree of encouragement. And I hope that it is for you too. That we're going to go through high highs and low lows. And in the midst of all of it, when things are easy and when things are hard, that what our job is simply to remain faithful. So friends, are you seeking to simply remain faithful? A lot of times, the right thing is also the hard thing. I want to pray for you today for encouragement. So God bless you, friends. Keep with the reading, and I'll see you next time.